I wrote a story up on Saturday for LouisianaSports.net. 3 early LSU football spring standouts. 2 weeks left in spring football for LSU. And I use these 3 names based on a couple things. One, our viewing time, which has been okay. It hasn't been quite as available as some springs and even fall camps in the past, but we've gotten a decent look, as well as some of the things that have been said in press conferences that I've taken note of. So that's where I've kind of determined who these spring standouts are. Certainly there are other guys who have had big springs, but these are the 3 that came to my mind as I did this exercise back on Saturday. The first, and again, this is going to get like a wry grin from some of the medias that have been to practice if you're listening, and maybe an eye roll from the people who have not been to practice that are listening, which is the vast majority of you, the listeners. But Chris Hilton is the answer. I know this is not the first time you've heard this. I know Chris Hilton has dealt with injuries for 4 years, but when we go to practice, you notice Chris Hilton. And we've seen a lot of really good wide receivers come through here. We know what that looks like. Chris Hilton could be an 800-yard receiver at LSU. I really believe that. I think he is far more than the burner that he was when he showed up. I think he's a good route runner. I think his hands are good. He's a great athlete who can go up and get the ball. He's really got the whole package. He's just got to be on the field. But I'm telling you, this guy had a monster fall camp, and he's had a really good spring. He's just got to get on the field. I think he knows that. I think that it would have been enticing for him to go run a fast time at the NFL Combine if he got invited, to run a really fast time at Pro Day, see if somebody take a flyer on him, and then go try to make a roster. Like, it would have been enticing for him to do that. But I think he realizes in coming back that he's got a chance to actually put great tape out there to go with what will be awesome measurables when he tries to take that professional step, which will now be next year. I think Chris Hilton's got a chance to have a really good fall, and I think he's had a great spring. So that's number 1 on my list. The second number on my list is a twofold piece, and that's Jack Pyburn. 1 on the field, 2 in the locker room. Pyburn has an edge to him. Like, there's just no two ways about it. The guy is in a complimentary way a psycho. Like, he is just 100 miles an hour when he is on the practice field, when he's in there in a game. And he leads by example in that way. When you make 60 tackles in the SEC playing defensive line, you are freaking active. Like, that is a guy who is getting after it. He's now trying to add to his repertoire the pass rush because he only had 1 sack at Florida. And he wasn't on the field on third downs a lot, and he just hasn't been a productive pass rusher. Doesn't mean he can't be. He hasn't been. And that's what Kevin Peoples is trying to get out of him. And I talked to Jack Pyburn with the rest of the media a couple of weeks ago, and Pyburn said how excited he was at some of the results he's starting to see from some of the techniques he's learning from Kevin Peoples. And that's a crowded position group. Jamari Butler is a veteran. Patrick Payton is an immense talent who's been crazy productive at Florida State. Gabe Relaford's a guy that LSU wants to get to the field. Like, there are a lot of dudes at edge, but Pyburn's going to play, and I think he's been impactful on the practice field in spring and impactful in the locker room as a guy who brings an edge every single day. And I've really enjoyed kind of watching that development from Jack Pyburn. So I think he's had a great run of it. Those 2 guys are old players. The next guy I'm going to talk about is not an old player, but he's a player that I think is emerging. And we heard this from Blake Baker last week, and we talked about it. But Dashawn Spears has had a good spring. And LSU has simply got to play better at safety. Jordan Gilbert's not out there. Hopefully his play ticks up a notch when the shoulder heals up. But you've got some options with or without Jordan Gilbert in the mix. You've got TaMarcus Cooley who can go back there and play if he needs to. You've got Joel Rogers. You've got Dashawn Spears. They've got to find some sort of combination at safety that's better than what they've put out there the last 2 years. And Spears is the most physically imposing safety on the roster. He's 6'3", he's 210, 215 pounds, and we thought he was going to work his way to the field last fall, and it didn't happen. They played the old guys. They played Burns. They played Sage Ryan. They kept those guys out there. I think Spears has a chance to be a breakout player in 2025. And that's the hope. And Blake Baker said last week, like, nobody was harder on Dashawn Spears last year than me, talking about himself, obviously. And it's starting to click. And when we were out there at practice 2 weeks ago, you saw Dashawn Spears in coverage do a great job on a play that was intended for Bauer Sharp, ran with him stride for stride. You also saw him come downhill and make a stop in the backfield on a run. I mean, that just harkens back those memories of, like, Jamal Adams shot out of a cannon. Now, Jamal Adams is a top 10 pick in the draft. Dashawn Spears has a long way to go to get to that type of player, clearly. Jamal Adams is probably the best safety I've ever seen at LSU. But the great teams that LSU has fielded, going back to 2003 with LaRon Landry, looking at 2011 with Brandon Taylor and Eric Reed, looking at 2019 with Grant Delpit, like, you've had great safeties. And that's something that LSU's been missing for the last few years. Dashawn Spears has the talent level to be one of those type guys. Now, the production doesn't match up. LaRon Landry, as a freshman, led the national champions in tackles. Okay? Eric Reed was ready to play his freshman year in October. And Spears didn't play like that as a freshman. So you've just based on that, got steps to climb to get to the production level of those type of guys. But he was a top 10 player in the state, a 4-star recruit, big physical frame, and it's starting to click for him a little bit in the spring. And I think that's really encouraging for LSU. So to me, the three guys who have stood out the most in the spring, Chris Hilton at wide receiver, Jack Pyburn off the edge on defense, and Dashawn Spears back at safety. I think those three guys have had a really, really good go of it in the spring. Got spring break this week, one more week of practice, and then you've got the spring game. Well, not the spring game, the spring open practice. And then they'll break for off-season workouts. But I think those three guys have really had a good go of it. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.